Good morning folks, 21st Century Caveman here. Hope everybody's safe, hope everybody's well. So in today's video then, I wanted to provide you with an update on the e-scooter which I recently purchased. In short, I've sent the thing back, returned to sender. So look, I wanted to take a little bit of time out this morning just to explain why I sent it back, why I was dissatisfied with it, just in case my purchasing of this item leads other people to make the same purchasing decision. I just want people to be fully informed, especially if they're bigger people like myself, so that they won't be dissatisfied with their purchase or end up out of pocket. So, first of all then, I think it's important to look at the reasons why I purchased this e-scooter and what the intended use was for. So first and foremost then, I wanted to use it to travel to and from work in a quicker, cheaper and more eco-friendly manner. My current conveyance is it's a big old four-wheel drive. It's got a 2.9 litre engine. It's a big mucky old thing basically, and it gets through the diesel. And also, given the significant congestion on most roads these days, and also the abundance of cycle tracks, I thought it could get me to work quicker at peak times. And also, let's not forget fuel prices. Now these have gone up dramatically over the past few months, and they're now at astronomical levels compared to what they were literally just going back to the start of the year. And it's now very expensive to use a big car like mine, and especially if you're just using it to run around town. So I'm obviously looking for a cheaper and more efficient alternative. Now, electricity. So this is clearly the fuel or the energy of the moment, because it's very cheap when you compare the cost of charging an electric item. So for example, a car or a scooter, compare with petrol or diesel, the differences, or the savings that can be made rather, are significant. But now I want to talk about why I chose this particular make and model. First of all, when you look at the specs, the range is very, very appealing indeed. So in all of the literature, it talks about a range of up to 59 miles. Now, the up to is really significant, and you need to put that in the back of your mind for a moment. It also quotes a maximum rider's weight of 140 kilos. And that's quite a significant amount, isn't it? Well, it's the equivalent of 22 stone or 308 pounds. So that's a big person, isn't it? Now, I weigh 112 kilos, which is 17.5 stone. The equivalent in pounds is 246. So basically, I'm well within the maximum rider's weight here. So, that was reassuring. Now, all of the reviews also state what a solid, well-built scooter this is, which should obviously make it more robust and longer lasting. The literature just talks about good lighting, and it does indeed have good lighting. That will obviously make it safer for the rider and for anybody who may come into contact with the scooter, be it pedestrians or other vehicle users. Now, it also had a decent rating. It was IP55, so this means it's going to have a decent water resistance rating, which is obviously worth bearing in mind, especially if you live in Blighty. Now, the top speed is not the best you're going to find, but it was reasonable, 15.5 miles an hour. So unless you're a lunatic and you just want to tear around, this is more than adequate for most people's purposes. And also, for under £1,000, it's an absolute, on paper anyway, it's an absolute brilliant buy. I mean, look, you can spend sort of £4,000 or £5,000 on a scooter, so this represents very good value for money indeed, especially when you look at the specifications. So that's the theory. Now let's look at the reality, shall we? So the reality is that the specs quoted by the manufacturer and or retailers, you've got to understand that these are headline figures. These are figures which are meant to grab somebody's attention and sell more units. It's as simple as that. So the reality then, well, the reality is that my first journey to work was not unpleasant. It's under 6 miles, and it was a very pleasant morning. There are no major slopes, no rough terrain or any major obstacles to negotiate. I had a fully charged battery when I left. It was on 5 bars. When I arrived at work, it was on 3 bars, which, to be honest, did surprise me a little bit. So anyway, after a shift at work, so we're looking 8 hours later, I started my return journey home. Now, there was some wind out at this point, and I did notice that the wind does play a big part, especially if you're a larger person like myself. You've obviously got a larger profile and you're going to catch more wind. This in itself is obviously going to slow you down. And the big issue here was I completed most of the journey. I got half a mile from my home and I encountered a minimal slope. The scooter basically started to slow down and it packed up after a very short while indeed. So the old spanner came on, which suggested that there was a problem. I wasn't quite sure what had happened, but it did cross my mind that the unit had overheated, and indeed that turned out to be the case. So basically I ended up pushing the thing home. Now, after parking it up in my backyard, it took about 35-40 minutes for it to return to a normal function. Now, when I say return to a normal function, basically the spanner went off and it was possible to use the scooter again. Now, I didn't actually go on it because at that point, to be honest with you, I'd already lost my confidence in it. So in summary then, on that day, I'd done 2 journeys of 5.7 miles each. So basically, that day I'd done under 12 miles in total with an 8-hour interval in between. On the second journey, I had to push it home. And incidentally, this does bring me to another point. Whilst there is a mode on the scooter, push assist, this feature is clearly designed to help people push the scooter. But here's the kicker, it won't work if your scooter overheats and the spanner sign comes on. And surely the main reason you'd want to push a scooter is if the bloody thing breaks down and you end up pushing it home. So to conclude then, I'm 6'4", I weigh 112 kilos, 17.5 stone, and I'm too big for it. It won't cope with even very modest journeys with somebody as big as me. And that's even if you're on the most appealing terrain, if it's flat, if there aren't any major hills or slopes. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, they're my experience of this scooter and why I sent it back. But I want to try and end this video on a more positive note and give you an idea as to who I believe this scooter is for. So I think this would be a good commuting scooter for short distances if you're a bigger person. And by shorter distances, I mean up to 3 miles tops, I would say, if you're somebody my sort of size, height and weight. Now, if you're a more average sized person, so let's say, for example, between 12 and 14 stone and up to about 6 foot, I think you could probably get a few more miles out of it. And also it would be suitable for taller, thinner people. The handlebars are rather tall on this, and I don't think this is for anybody under sort of 5'6". It would also be a good fun or leisure scooter if you fall within the aforementioned criteria. And it's also going to be more useful to somebody if you live in a relatively flat area, because other than your personal attributes, things like hills and long upward slopes will be the biggest battery killers for a unit like this, and indeed any other machine. Anyway, look folks, thank you very much indeed for tuning in for another video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've got some benefit from it. Please like, subscribe, share the video with your family, your friends, and please join me again for another video. You take care. Bye bye.